Hello everyone, I'm Maribel Demeter. I'm here to present an interesting weight loss strategy as well as some evidence to support it. So we'll start by addressing the problem. As we already know, nearly 70% of people in the United States are overweight or obese. This map from the CDC shows the prevalence of obesity, which is about 30 to 35% in most states. And we could see that 4 states now have obesity rates above 35%. The National Weight Control Registry found that people who have been successful at weight loss and maintenance created an adequate energy deficit each week through exercise, which amounted to 80 minutes of moderate exercise a day, or 35 minutes of vigorous exercise a day. So this equates to about 28 miles of walking per week. If we split it up, it's 4 miles a day, 7 days a week, but some people might even say, wow, that's longer than walking a marathon every week. So because of these findings, the ACSM has modified its stance of 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week, which is 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Not only do we want to prevent weight gain, we also want to encourage weight loss, prevent weight regain, and really focus on maintenance, since that seems to be the key. So for moderate intensity, the ACSM recommends 200 to 350 minutes of exercise per week. And that equates to about 2,000 calories expended energy per week. So if we split that up, 7 days a week, it's 30 to 15 minutes per day. Let's see how it is for 5 days a week, even 3 days a week. It's definitely a lot more time that you need to do if you're going to compress the days. So when using the health belief model and designing an intervention to create positive change and to help encourage self-efficacy and self-empowerment, the first step is to address the perceived barriers an individual might feel. This could be barriers related to cost, lack of access to healthy food or health care. Maybe they live in an unsafe neighborhood, aren't able to walk outdoors. Sometimes there are internal barriers such as lack of social support or motivation, or maybe they feel a lot of pain or discomfort when they exercise. So in a study conducted on 240 obese or overweight women, they found that the biggest barrier was the lack of time. And they rated it, and it was really the highest rated, comparing it to different issues with maintaining diet and exercise. So basically, less time, what do? More intensity. So this is why I decided to study the effects of high-intensity interval training on the obese population. So commonly known as HIIT, the idea is to exercise at a high intensity of effort. It's 80 to 90% of the maximum heart rate, with short blocks of recovery of 40 to 50% of max heart rate. So I found that this is actually modifiable for all fitness levels. You could do it walking, swimming, or cycling, which is fairly low impact and could really work for obese individuals, especially those who are sedentary. It also saves time, and it offers lots of opportunities for recovery. And the studies found that there were a lot of positive feedback among the overweight and obese individuals who were studied. So we could see how the heart rate goes up and down and up and down. See how the intervals work as we track an individual's heart rate. So in one study, there are 3 comparisons, 46 individuals, 30 women, 16 men, 12 weeks long. It was 3 times a week they exercised on a cycle ergometer, much like the one pictured here. So the 3 groups: high-intensity interval training group, the medium intensity, and half of the high intensity. And the first 2 groups were asked to burn 250 calories, whereas the third group burned half of that, which is 125. So the HIIT group sprinted for 8 seconds. They worked as hard as they could. They were recovering for 12 seconds in between intervals, where they pedaled very slowly. They worked at 80 to 90% of their max heart rate, and they worked until they burned 250 calories, and it took an average time of about 20 minutes. The medium intensity continuous group cycled continuously, 70% of their heart rate, until they reached 250 calories, and it took them about 32 minutes to complete the exercises. So the half HIIT group did the same thing as the HIIT group, but they worked until they burned 125 calories, and this lasted an average of 10 minutes. So all groups had improvements in body weight, composition, insulin sensitivity, resting metabolic rate, and substrate oxidation. They also had improvements in cardiovascular fitness. But the most significant findings were with the half HIIT group. the biggest changes, especially in body weight and waist circumference. So we see here the differences in the measurements with the biggest changes, which were with weight and the waist circumference. There were changes in all, but you could see here the half HIIT group had the biggest changes. So in summary, the HIIT and the medium intensity groups had the lowest glucose and insulin levels. All groups had similar substrate oxidation levels, but there was a small sample size and it was a short duration of exercise. And they were only able to obtain measurements from the torso and legs. But the researchers said it was still adequate as far as measurements because the abdominal adiposity is what they were really looking at. So in a simpler study, it involved 8 women and 8 men. They were randomly assigned to 2 groups. The study was 4 weeks long, which was 2 days of 30 minutes of exercise daily, two daily 30-minute exercises on a cycle ergometer, and this was 6 days a week. So Group A exercised for 30 minutes at a constant rate, 70% of heart rate. Group B, 25 minutes, the same heart rate, except they added 5 minutes at 85%. So we found that Group A had some changes in body weight, fat mass, fat-free mass, which was good. It was positive. But Group B had bigger changes, and we could see that difference here. The big difference too was that Group A had a lower level measurements of non-esterified fatty acids, whereas Group B, it was not as significant, and the researchers said it was because of the anaerobic training. So in summary, aerobic training plus a short bout of anaerobic training decreased body fat more significantly. However, there were no statistically significant improvements in metabolic measurements. But also this was a short training period, and some people in the study might have had higher levels of fat-free mass. So one study which I found to be very significant was the impact of high-intensity interval training on appetite. The ACSM does say that even bigger changes can be seen if an individual creates a calorie deficit through exercise and calorie restriction. So that's why I felt this study was worthwhile to look into. So this involved 4 groups of 17 men who were randomized in a counterbalance study. And there were basically 4 trials: medium intensity, high intensity, very high intensity, and a control group that rested. So the medium intensity continuous group exercise continuously at a moderate rate, 60% VO2 max. High intensity group alternated between high and low at a 1:4 ratio, so 60 seconds at 100%, and then 240 seconds at 50% VO2 max. And then a very high intensity group also alternated between high and low, same ratio, but 15 seconds at 170 VO2 max, and 60 seconds at 32%. And then the control group just stayed in a supine rest position. So 5 minutes after every trial, each individual consumed 350 milliliters of a liquid meal, which consisted basically 60% carbs, 15% protein, 30% fat. And they were asked to consume this meal in 2 minutes and then sit quietly for an hour. So 70 minutes after consuming this liquid meal, they consumed what they called an ad libitum meal, which was porridge, instant oats and milk, and they were also allowed 1,000 milliliters of water. They were asked to consume this meal in 20 minutes and only eat until they were comfortably full. And afterwards, the meal and the water were weighed, whatever was left over. And there were a lot of control measures as far as keeping the room at an ambient temperature of 21 to 23 degrees Celsius. The same exact bowl was used for every individual each time they took the test, and no one was present in the room while they ate. So the ad libitum intake was negatively associated with the intensity level of every exercise. So basically the energy intake was lower after high intensity and very high intensity. Also, blood lactate levels were taken. They're highest after the very high intensity exercise, lower with each subsequent intensity level of training. And the interesting thing is this remained high for up to 65 minutes after exercising. Ghrelin levels also dropped immediately after a very high intensity, remained low for 35 to 65 minutes afterwards, and this involved less food intake. And the researchers say that is because of the diversion of blood away from the gastrointestinal tract. Lactate and glucose levels were also higher in the medium continuous group than the control group. It stayed higher for 1 hour after the very high intensity compared to the control group. Lactate levels also suppress appetite. Glucose levels also can reduce food intake, at least in the short term. So basically, they also found that 2 days after the study, energy intake stayed low for the very high intensity group compared to the medium continuous intensity and the control group. The only limitations were there were no women involved in this study. It would have been interesting to see both sexes studied in this group, and also chronic conditions were not addressed. So in conclusion, the ACSM finds that physical activity has lots of positive benefits. Even a 3% body fat loss can lower your cholesterol levels, decrease triglyceride levels, reduce insulin resistance, and all of these benefits can contribute positively to heart disease and also lowering diabetes. In keeping with the ACSM's recommendation, this also can prevent weight gain, encourage weight loss, prevent weight regain, and you don't have to worry about 200 to 350 minutes per week of moderate intensity. If you work at a higher intensity, you can hit that 2,000 calories much more quickly. So this addresses the barrier of lack of time. Higher intensity means shorter workouts. It's ideal for sedentary individuals because high intensity interval training provides lots of chances to rest in between the intervals. It's very adaptable to every fitness level, and it's ideal for those who can't exercise for long periods of time. It gives them a chance for their bodies to adapt to exercise, especially if they're sedentary. And this is the end of my presentation, and thank you.